At my wife's funeral, my own son pulled me aside and whispered, "We're cutting your allowance. You're on your own now." His wife didn't even look up from her phone. That Sunday, I walked out with one bag. When they came home, I was gone. 123 missed calls later, they finally understood. The house, the trust, everything had always been mine. My name is Wade Calloway. I'm 58 years old. I've lived in Fresno most of my adult life, and I spent 28 years as a civil construction engineer before my knees and my patience both gave out around the same time. I know what it means to build something from the ground up, not as a figure of speech. I mean, I have mixed concrete, set forms, read soil reports at 6 in the morning, with coffee going cold in my hand. The house on Thesa Street, I drew the addition plans myself. Poured the back patio slab one weekend in 1998, with my brother Floyd mixing beside me. That matters later. Keep it in mind, I get my pension on the 1st of every month. I rent a small commercial unit over in Clovis, and most mornings I'm in the garage turning wood on a lathe. Bowls, frames, small things. Nothing that needs to impress anybody. Just work that takes patience to get right. My son Garrett is 36. He manages warehouse operations for a distribution company near the airport. Smart enough with numbers, not so smart about property law, which turned out to matter a great deal. He married Tammy in the fall of 2015. Before that, he used to call me on Sundays. Nothing specific. We'd drive out to the lake, sit on the tailgate of my truck, maybe say 40 words between us. That was fine. That was good, actually. I think about those drives more than I probably should. Tammy is 34. Before she married Garrett, she spent 2 years working in real estate. Not long enough to get her broker's license, but long enough to understand property values the way a mechanic understands engines. She's smart in a specific way. She reads a room fast. She figured out within the first year of living in my house on Thesa Street exactly which opinions I'd hold and which I'd let go. She filed that away and used it. My wife Donna was a public librarian for most of her career. Quiet woman, careful about people. She read them the same way she read books. Slowly, without rushing to a conclusion. About 3 weeks before she passed, Donna took my hand. She was already tired. She said, "Wade, I'm scared Tammy doesn't love our son. I'm scared she loves this house. I told her she was overthinking it. I was wrong." I knew I was wrong about 2 weeks later. But by then, Donna didn't have the strength for another conversation like that, so I kept it to myself and started making calls. Here's what the situation actually looked like, laid out flat. Garrett and Tammy had been living in my house on Thesa Street for 4 years. They started paying reduced rent. The rent kept getting reduced until it was nothing. We're family, Dad. Sure, I understood that. What I understood less clearly as the years went on was the pattern underneath it. 2019, the roof started going. I got 3 estimates. The lowest came in at $23,000. I wrote the check without a conversation because what was I going to say? The house needed a roof. That same year, Tammy had their second child and needed time to recover. I watched both kids for 5 months. Mornings, some afternoons, a few full days when something came up. Garrett managed "You're a lifesaver. Dad once in September said it the way you say something when you're already halfway out the door." Tammy said nothing. Not once. I'm not a man who needs a parade, but one word would have been something. 2022, Garrett asked for $9,000, said it was temporary, he'd pay it back. He paid back $3,000 over the following year and told me the rest was tied up in something. I nodded. By then I'd learned that nodding was faster than asking. On top of all that, I was putting roughly $6,000 a year into general household support. Groceries when things were tight, a utility bill here and there, repairs I just handled because it was my house and I couldn't watch it fall apart. Over 5 years, that added up to about $30,000. That's separate from the roof, separate from the loan. And then on top of all of that, I was giving Garrett $500 a month directly, which he called a monthly allowance for expenses. His word, not mine. That $6,000 a year had been going on for the better part of 4 years. I wasn't counting at the time, or I was counting, but I wasn't writing it down, which is different. Nobody was counting on my behalf. Our neighbor Bia Alvarez is 72 years old and has been on that block longer than I have. She called me the afternoon after the funeral. She said she hadn't wanted to bring it up before, didn't want to add to things. But Tammy had come around about 2 months earlier asking what houses were selling for in the neighborhood. Said she was just curious about the market. Donna was still in the hospital at the time. I thanked Bia and hung up. Then I went to the shared computer in the kitchen. Took me about 3 minutes to find it. A name in the browser history, Wanda Eckhart, estate litigation attorney, Fresno. The search was dated 6 weeks before Donna died. Garrett had started planning before his mother was in the ground. I sat with that for a while, not angry exactly, something colder than anger, like a door closing all the way and the latch clicking into place. Quiet, final. I already knew what I was going to do. I just needed to let the feeling settle before I started moving. The funeral was on a Thursday, same chapel Donna's parents used, out on Shields Avenue. About 60 people, most of them older than me, the kind of crowd where everybody knew somebody who had already gone. So the grief in the room had that layered quality to it. People held paper cups of bad coffee and talked quietly near the door. The almond trees outside had already dropped their blossoms. The petals were dried and brown on the asphalt. I noticed that because I needed something to look at besides faces. Afterward, in the parking lot, while people were still standing around, not quite ready to leave, Tammy came up to me first. She put her hand on my shoulder. Warm, steady, the kind of touch that's been practiced until it feels natural. "Wade," she said, voice low, "we've been thinking about you so much. We think this might be a good time to talk about what comes next. Garrett has something he wants to say." Then she stepped back. That was her move. She set it up and stepped back. Garrett steered me about 15 feet from the nearest group. His voice was measured. Quiet. The voice of a man who has rehearsed something enough times that he thinks it sounds unrehearsed. "Dad, you've been doing so much for so long. Me and Tammy, we've been talking. We think it's time for you to live for yourself. The monthly support, the $500 every month, we think that needs to stop. You don't have to carry all this anymore." I looked past him at Tammy. She was already back on her phone, thumb moving across the screen. She did not look up once during that entire conversation. I looked back at Garrett. He had the expression of a man who has convinced himself he's doing something kind. That's the part that stays with me. He genuinely believed the packaging. The parking lot was quiet except for pigeons and distant traffic on Shaw Avenue. I stood there for about 4 seconds. That's a long time when someone's waiting to see how you'll react. Then I said one sentence. Garrett went very still. I walked to my truck and I drove home. I'm not going to tell you what the sentence was. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I said it once, calmly, and then I was done with that part of the conversation. That night, I sat in the garage. The Powermatic lathe was right where it always is, along the left wall. I'd bought it in 2009 and it still runs clean. The shelves had maple blanks, cherry rounds, a few pieces of black walnut I'd been saving. The smell in there is sawdust and linseed oil. If you've spent years working with your hands, you probably understand why a man can stand in a room like that and feel more like himself than anywhere else. I was holding the wooden bowl I'd turned for Donna years back. There was a crack running through it from when it got knocked off the kitchen windowsill in 2022. Garrett said sorry at the time. The bowl didn't go back together. I sat there for a while just holding it, not crying, not angry, just sitting with it the way you sit with something you already know the answer to but aren't quite ready to say out loud. Then I set the bowl down, opened my laptop, and typed California Trust Restatement Attorney Fresno. Here's something people don't understand about quiet men. Quiet doesn't mean slow. I had already been watching things for a while, not obsessively. The way you watch weather when you live somewhere that burns. You read the conditions. You notice what's dry. 3 weeks before Donna passed, while she was still in hospice, I had signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment in Tower District. First and last month up front, $2,760 total. West-facing windows. Coffee shop half a block down. I signed it on a Tuesday afternoon while Garrett was at work and Tammy was at the gym. The week before the funeral, I had moved every original document into a safety deposit box at my branch on Blackstone. The deed from 1991, the living trust Donna and I had drawn up in 2008, 3 years of bank records, pension statements, everything with my name on it. They thought I was just an old man in grief. They were half right. That Sunday, Garrett and Tammy loaded the kids into the SUV and drove to Malaga for her parents' birthday party. I watched from the kitchen window until the car was out of sight. The kids waved from the back window. I waved back, then I went to the garage. I rolled my Henry Taylor turning tools into a canvas cloth and set them in the bottom of a duffel bag, added my documents, a change of clothes, chargers, a jacket. I did not take the cracked wooden bowl. I left it on the kitchen windowsill where it had always been. I didn't need to take it. I already knew what it meant. At 9:15, I was in my truck. At 9:47, I was pulling into the parking lot of my new apartment in Tower District. By midnight, 38 missed calls. By the following evening, 12:23. I watched the number go up the way you watch a fuel gauge drop on a long drive, steady, predictable. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I was punishing anybody, because there was nothing useful to say yet. And I've never seen the point in talking when I have nothing useful to say. Monday morning, I was in Clint Hargrove's office on Fulton Street, Suite 310, slow elevator, frosted glass door. He came out at 9:15 on the dot, shook my hand once, and said, "Come in." I laid the documents on his desk in the order I'd organized them the night before. He read everything. Actually read it, turned pages carefully, made notes in the margin with a pencil. I respected that. There's a difference between a professional who performs thoroughness and one who actually does it. He looked up after about 12 minutes. "You're the sole surviving trustee," Hargrove said. "When your wife passed, full control of the trust transferred to you automatically, by operation of law. No court, no filing, no permission required. He set the deed flat on the desk between us. Garrett is listed as a beneficiary, him and his children. But here's what most people don't understand about trusts. A beneficiary has no control over the trust assets. They have a right to eventually receive what the trust designates for them. That's it. The trustee, which is you, decides how the assets are managed, when distributions happen, and who ultimately benefits." He paused to let that land. "You can amend this trust. You can restate it entirely. You can change the beneficiaries to whoever you choose. That is your legal right as trustee, and nobody can take that right away from you without a court order based on evidence of incapacity or fraud. Neither of which applies here." He said all of that the way a contractor tells you a load-bearing wall can be moved. Technically accurate, practically significant. No drama. I told him I wanted a full restatement, not just an amendment. He said the difference was clarity. An amendment layers on top of the original document and leaves room for interpretation. A full restatement replaces everything cleanly. Costs $2,800, takes up to 3 weeks. I told him to start immediately. Then I asked about a private investigator. I explained what I needed. Not surveillance, nothing dramatic, just confirmation of what Garrett had already done and what he might be planning next. Hargrove wrote a name on the back of a business card. Dale Pruitt, Kern Street. "He's accurate," Hargrove said. "Not good, not reliable, accurate." That was the right word, and I appreciated that he used it. I called Dale that afternoon. His office was 1 room, a desk, 2 chairs, a window facing a brick wall. He didn't offer coffee. I gave him 2 tasks. First, confirm Garrett had consulted Wanda Eckhart and find out what he'd asked about. Second, watch the house on Thesa Street and report any unusual activity. Retainer $1,500, hard cap at $4,000. Clean handshake. I was back on the street in under 20 minutes. I also asked Dale to do one more thing before he left. Install a small wide-angle camera in my garage, pointed at the door. Nothing fancy. Just something that ran continuously and saved to a cloud account with my login. He had it up by Friday. 4 days later, Dale called with his first report. He had confirmed the February consultation with Wanda Eckhart. Garrett had asked her about beneficiary rights and trustee oversight. Specifically, how much power a beneficiary has over a trustee who controls real property. The answer Wanda would have given him was, not much. Not without a court order. Dale had also found that Garrett had attempted to obtain a copy of the trust document through Wanda's office using her letterhead. The county recorder's office had declined the request. As sole living trustee, I hadn't authorized any release, and there was no court order compelling one. Garrett had tried to get the map without asking the mapmaker. The trust restatement was close to finished when Hargrove called to tell me Garrett had filed a formal beneficiary access petition through Wanda's office. Under California probate code, a named beneficiary is entitled to a trust accounting. It was a legitimate move. Hargrove had expected it. The problem was the notary who had certified my restatement document got nervous when the petition hit his desk. He paused the recording as a precaution, not a court order. Just a man being cautious about getting caught in the middle of something. If Wanda escalates to a formal injunction within 10 days, Hargrove said, a judge could freeze the recording until there's a ruling. What do I need to do? Go to the recorder's office in person. Show your ID, show your medical records, answer the notary's standard competency questions, confirm your intent directly. The hesitation dissolves and the document records that same day. I was at the Fresno County Recorder's office the next morning at 8:45. 15 minutes before they unlocked the front door, The Central Valley was already pushing 85 degrees by 900. The notary on duty was a woman named Nadine. She processed documents with the kind of quiet efficiency that comes from never once being surprised by paperwork. I laid out the trust restatement, my photo ID, and a letter from my physician dated 3 weeks prior. Annual checkup, clean bill of health, full cognitive function, signed and stamped. Nadine asked me 3 standard competency questions. I answered them. She notarized my statement of intent in under 7 minutes. Recording fee, $35. I paid cash. The full trust restatement recorded at 11:02 that morning. New beneficiaries: Cal Fire Benevolent Fund, 60%. Floyd Calloway, 40%. Garrett Calloway and Tammy Calloway removed entirely. As completely as a name can be removed from a legal document in the state of California. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for about a minute after I got the confirmation number from Hargrove. The document was public record, time-stamped, filed before Wanda Eckhart had finished processing Garrett's access petition. Whatever move they had been planning, they needed to make it before 11:02 a.m. that day. They hadn't. Dale's next report came in a few days later. In the weeks since I'd left the house, Tammy had gone around and talked to 3 different neighbors on the block. Structured conversations. 2 of them were asked whether I'd seemed confused lately, whether I'd been acting differently, whether anything had seemed off about my behavior in recent months. That's the playbook for a contested trust on incapacity grounds. You build a record with neighbors before you ever step into a courtroom. Get enough people saying the trustee seemed off, and you give a judge a reason to look twice. I brought 3 years of clean medical records to Hargrove the next morning. Routine physicals, a knee follow-up from a hiking trip, 1 dental cleaning. Nothing touching cognition or capacity. Hargrove set the folder on his desk. Their incompetency claim falls apart at the first hearing, he said. Clean medical records, independent legal counsel, original documents correctly identified and produced, full restatement with notarized intent. A judge dismisses that before lunch. Then Dale sent the report I had been half expecting. Photos, time-stamped. Tammy in the parking structure at Fashion Fair Mall on Palm Avenue, meeting a man nobody recognized, heavy build, gray t-shirt, jeans, handshake, a folder changing hands. Dale had shot it from 2 levels up, clean angles. The man had visited the house on Thesis Street twice in the previous 10 days, arriving each time in a white panel van with no markings. Tammy had also withdrawn $14,200 in cash from her personal account 3 days before the van's first visit. Hargrove didn't need long to work it out. They can't get the property, he said, so they're converting what they can physically reach. The appliances, the furniture, your wife's writing desk. Cash transaction. No paper trail. Move it before you notice. I also called my homeowner's insurance carrier that week. I had been with the same company for 22 years. I explained that I was the sole owner of the property, that I no longer resided there, and that the current occupants had no ownership interest. The agent adjusted the policy to non-owner occupied. Under the new terms, the occupants had no claim against the policy. If something happened while they were living there, a kitchen fire, a burst pipe, anything at all, they would find out the hard way that they were uninsured. I didn't call Garrett to tell him. That was information I was happy to let him discover on his own schedule. The 30-day notice ran out on a Tuesday. I drove to Thesis Street that afternoon and parked out front for a moment before getting out. The lawn needed cutting. The almond tree was dropping its early summer pods on the sidewalk. I planted that tree in 1997. It's been doing the same thing every June since. The front door was locked. I used my key. Empty. The refrigerator was gone. There was a clean square on the linoleum where it had stood for 14 years. The TV bracket was still on the wall, but the screen was gone. Donna's antique writing desk was gone from the second bedroom, closets open and cleared. The washer and dryer pulled out from the utility alcove, connection hoses still dripping onto the floor. I walked through every room without hurrying. The ceilings I had painted, the floors I had laid, the dining room window I reframed myself after a 2015 rainstorm warped the original sill. I drew the plans for this addition. I poured the back patio slab with Floyd beside me on a Saturday in 1998, when we were both younger and my back didn't know what it was in for. They took the contents. They couldn't take what held it up. The garage was lost. One small window on the sidewall had been broken. A single pane punched through from outside. Glass on the floor. The Powermatic lathe was exactly where it had always been. The shelves had been cleared of most of the loose lumber, but the maple rounds I kept in the locked metal cabinet were untouched. Nobody had thought to bring bolt cutters. I stood in the middle of that garage and looked at the broken window, a fist through a pane of glass. That was everything they had left to throw at this room. I called Garrett that evening. He picked up on the fourth ring. "Dad, stop." I kept my voice level. I told him I knew about the cash withdrawal, the man with the van, the calls to the real estate offices, the conversations with the neighbors about whether I seemed confused. I told him I had documentation on every move for the past 3 weeks. "Go look up the Fresno County Recorder's Office," I said. "The trust restatement has been on file since May. Read who the beneficiaries are now." Silence on his end. "You can't just." "I already did. You have 30 days. I ended the call. Hargrove had the notice to quit ready the next morning. A process server delivered it to the front door at 10:15 a.m. The civil complaint followed shortly after. Unauthorized removal of personal property, fully itemized under the homeowner's insurance policy. $14,200 claimed plus attorney's fees. Dale's photographs and the insurance inventory made it straightforward. Wanda Eckhart filed a response. Hargrove sent her the insurance policy with every item listed under Wade Calloway. Replacement values noted. Her next response took 4 days. The case settled for $9,800. The same day Hargrove confirmed the wire, I wrote a personal check for $9,800 and mailed it to the Cal Fire Benevolent Fund, the organization that helps families of firefighters killed or injured on the job, same one now listed as 60% beneficiary in my trust. Felt like the right place for that money to go. Garrett has not called since the settlement paperwork was signed. Tammy has not called since the night I told her there is a difference between destroying a family and taking back what is yours. The grandkids are a different matter, and I hold that separately. That door is not closed, it is just not open yet. I write to the older one at school sometimes, a short note, nothing heavy, just so he knows his grandfather is around. The house on Thesa Street is currently rented to a young family at $2,400 a month, market rate. The rent goes to a local community building fund. I don't need the income, I just needed to decide where it goes. Floyd drove down from Hanford last Saturday. Brought 2 coffees from a place he has been going to since 1994. We went straight to the garage. I turned on the lathe and it settled into its rhythm the same way it always has. Floyd stood there with his coffee and didn't say anything for a long time. That's always been his way. Eventually he asked, "You angry at him?" I thought about it. Actually thought about it. "No," I said. "He did me a favor, reminded me whose house this was." Floyd nodded once. The kind of nod that doesn't need anything added to it. The lathe kept turning. Shavings fell on the floor. Outside, Fresno was doing what it always does in late summer. The heat finally starting to ease a little. The almond orchards north of town catching the late afternoon light. Everything I built was still standing. If this story hit close to home, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. A lot of men your age and mine have been through some version of this. Some of them figured it out. Some of them didn't because nobody told them what they were actually entitled to. If this helped you see something more clearly, pass it along to someone who needs to hear it. The next story is in the box on the left.